The morning light filtered through the stained glass windows of St. Catherine's Convent, casting colorful patterns across the worn wooden floor of the chapel. Sister Maria Teresa sat in the back row, her wrinkled hands folded in prayer. At 87 years old, she was the oldest resident of the convent, her face a roadmap of lines that told stories of decades of service, joy, and silent sacrifice. The chapel was empty except for her and the dust particles dancing in the colored light. This early morning solitude had become her favorite time of day, a chance to speak to God without interruption and to rest her increasingly painful joints. Before the day's activities began, another day in your service, she whispered, slowly rising from the pew. Her bones protested with familiar creaks and pops that had become the soundtrack of her mornings. As she made her way through the quiet hallway toward the dining hall for breakfast, she paused outside the small music room. Through the partially opened door, she could see the old upright piano, its wood chipped and faded, keys yellowed with age. No one would be using the room this early. Sister Maria glanced down the empty hallway before slipping inside and easing the door closed behind her. She moved to the piano bench and sat down with a sigh of relief. Her fingers, twisted by arthritis, hovered above the keys for a moment before she placed them gently on the cool ivory. She didn't press down. Not yet. In these stolen moments, she often just sat in silence, remembering what it had felt like when her hands were young and nimble. Before she became Sister Maria Teresa, she had been simply Anna, a promising young pianist at the Vienna Conservatory. The memory of music sheets, strict teachers, and the smell of polished concert halls seemed to belong to another lifetime. With a soft exhale, she finally pressed the keys, keeping her touch light enough that the sound wouldn't travel far. The opening notes of Chopin's Nocturne Op. 9 No. 2 filled the small room. Despite her stiff fingers, the melody flowed with an elegance that spoke of thousands of hours of practice and a lifetime of passion. Sister Maria closed her eyes, letting her hands remember what her mind sometimes forgot. For these few minutes, the pain in her joints seemed to fade, replaced by the pure joy of creation. She was so lost in the music that she didn't notice the door opening until a voice broke through her reverie. "Sister Maria." "There you are." Her hands jerked away from the keys as if burned. Sister Catherine, one of the younger nuns at only 65, stood in the doorway with a concerned expression. "Everyone's at breakfast. Sister Agnes was worried when you didn't show up." "I'm sorry," Sister Maria said, carefully rising from the bench. "I lost track of time." Sister Catherine's expression softened as she looked at the piano. "It's beautiful when you play. I don't know why you don't do it more often, during recreation hours when everyone could enjoy it." Sister Maria smiled but didn't answer. How could she explain that playing for others made her feel like she was showing off? That in her heart, music had always been a conversation between herself and God? "Come on," Sister Catherine said, offering her arm for support. "They've made your favorite oatmeal with cinnamon." As they walked to the dining hall, Sister Maria's thoughts drifted to the day, 63 years ago, when she had chosen this life. She had been 24, already making a name for herself in Vienna's competitive music scene. Her teachers had spoken of concert tours, of recordings, but something had been missing, a hollowness that success couldn't fill. She had found her answer during a midnight mass, when the church organ had seemed to speak directly to her soul. The decision to join the order had shocked her family and friends. "What a waste of talent," her piano teacher had said. But Sister Maria had never regretted her choice. At breakfast, the dining hall hummed with the quiet conversations of 24 nuns. Sister Maria took her usual seat near the window, nodding greetings to her sisters. "There you are," said Sister Agnes, the current Mother Superior. At 70, she ran the convent with efficient kindness. "We were beginning to worry." "Just saying an extra prayer," Sister Maria replied, not mentioning the piano. She stirred her oatmeal slowly, enjoying the simple pleasure of cinnamon and the warmth of the bowl in her hands. Halfway through the meal, Sister Agnes tapped her water glass with a spoon, calling for attention. "Sisters, I have an announcement to make. As you all know, our heating system needs major repairs before winter. The estimates have come in, and I'm afraid we need to make some difficult decisions to cover the costs." A murmur went around the table. The convent operated on a tight budget, supported by their small bakery, donations, and the modest pensions of the retired nuns. "We'll be postponing the garden renovations, of course," Sister Agnes continued, and we'll need to sell some items that aren't essential to our mission." Sister Maria listened with half an ear, her mind already drifting back to the Chopin piece she'd been playing. She had almost reached the middle section when she'd been interrupted, including the piano in the music room. Sister Maria's head snapped up. "What?" Sister Agnes looked at her with sympathy. "I'm sorry, Sister Maria, the piano needs repairs itself and we simply can't justify keeping it when we're struggling to heat the building." "But—" Sister Maria's voice faltered. The piano had been at the convent longer than she had. Generations of novices had learned on it, and local children came for lessons twice a week. "Surely there are other things we could sell instead." "We've considered everything," Sister Agnes said firmly. "The piano is used less and less these days. Most of the sisters who played have passed on, and the children's program has been declining in enrollment." Sister Maria wanted to say that she played it, that she needed it, but the words stuck in her throat. How could she claim such a need when others were giving up so much more? After breakfast, she returned to the music room. The piano seemed different now, like a friend with a terminal diagnosis. She ran her hand along its scratched surface, remembering all the times it had been her confidant and comfort. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. It was Sister Agnes. "I thought I might find you here," she said, entering the room. "I wanted to talk to you privately about the piano." Sister Maria nodded, not trusting her voice. "I know what it means to you," Sister Agnes said, sitting beside her on the bench. "I've heard you playing in the early mornings." Sister Maria looked up in surprise. "Did you think no one noticed?" Sister Agnes smiled. "Your playing is a gift, Maria. It always has been. Then why sell it?" The words came out more sharply than she intended. Sister Agnes sighed. "Because we need heat more than music. But also—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I've seen how much pain you're in lately. Your arthritis is getting worse, isn't it?" Sister Maria looked down at her hands, the swollen joints, the fingers that wouldn't straighten completely anymore. "It's manageable, is it? Sister Rose told me you couldn't button your cardigan yesterday, that you had to ask for help." Heat rose to Sister Maria's cheeks. She hated requiring assistance for such simple tasks. "Maria," Sister Agnes said gently, using her given name rather than her religious one, a sign of their long friendship. "You're pushing yourself too hard. The doctor said you need to rest your hands, not strain them further." "Playing isn't a strain," Sister Maria insisted. It's what keeps me going." "And what happens when you can't play anymore? When the pain becomes too much?" Sister Agnes took her hand carefully. "I'm worried about you holding on too tightly to what was instead of accepting what is." The words stung because there was truth in them. Sister Maria had noticed how much longer it took her to recover after playing, how sometimes she couldn't sleep from the aching in her fingers. She began, then stopped. How could she explain that the piano was her last connection to the person she had been before, that when she played she felt whole in a way that nothing else provided? "A music store in town has offered a fair price," Sister Agnes said. "They'll refurbish it and find it a good home, and the money will help keep us all warm this winter." She stood up. "They're coming to pick it up on Friday. Just 3 days away." Sister Maria nodded, accepting the inevitable. "I'll leave you to say your goodbyes," Sister Agnes said softly, heading for the door. She paused before leaving. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I truly am." When she was alone again, Sister Maria turned back to the piano. Her fingers found the keys without looking, and she began to play. Not Chopin this time, but Bach. The structured, mathematical precision of his music had always helped her make sense of chaos. She played until the pain forced her to stop, then sat in silence, her hands resting on the keys that would soon belong to someone else. Change had been the one constant in her long life. Why did this particular change hurt so much? "You're being silly, old woman," she muttered to herself. "It's just a piano. Just wood and wire and ivory." But they both knew it wasn't true. The next morning, Sister Maria rose before dawn as usual. Instead of going to the chapel, she went straight to the music room. If she had only 3 days left with the piano, she would make the most of every minute. Her hands protested as she began to play, but she pushed through the pain. This time she didn't try to muffle the sound. If anyone heard, so be it. This was her farewell concert, even if she was the only audience that mattered. Friday came too quickly. Sister Maria watched from the chapel window as 2 men loaded the old piano into a truck. She had said her private goodbyes the night before. playing until her fingers refused to cooperate anymore. Now she simply observed as another chapter of her life closed. "It's for the best," Sister Agnes said, appearing beside her. "The heating repairs start next week." Sister Maria nodded without speaking. She understood the practical reasons, but understanding didn't ease the ache in her chest. "I have some news that might cheer you up," Sister Agnes continued. "The bishop has approved our proposal to open part of the convent as a community center. We'll be offering after-school programs, adult education classes, and a safe gathering space for neighborhood events." This did catch Sister Maria's interest. Their neighborhood had changed over the decades, becoming poorer as factories closed and younger families moved away. The remaining residents, mostly elderly people and struggling families, had few resources. "When does it start?" she asked. "Renovations begin next month. We hope to open by Christmas." Sister Agnes hesitated before adding, "The community center was your idea, you know. 20 years ago, when you were teaching piano to those children from the housing project." Sister Maria had almost forgotten. Back then, she'd noticed how the children who came for lessons often lingered afterward, reluctant to go home to empty apartments while their parents worked second shifts. She had suggested opening their doors wider, but at the time, the Mother Superior had been too traditional to consider it. "Times change," Sister Maria said with a small smile, "sometimes for the better." The following weeks brought a flurry of activity to St. Catherine's. Contractors arrived to repair the heating system and renovate the east wing for public use. Younger nuns took on the task of clearing out decades of accumulated items from storage rooms and classrooms. Even Sister Maria found herself assigned light duties, sorting through old sheet music and books to determine what might be useful for the community. Programs. Working with the familiar. Music sheets brought both pain and pleasure. Each piece triggered memories of times she had played it or taught it to students. She created neat piles, beginner pieces, intermediate challenges, advanced works that few would attempt. These last she held on to longer, running her fingers over the notes as if she could hear them through touch alone. Sister Rose, a cheerful nun in her 50s who had been assigned to help, noticed her lingering over a particularly difficult Beethoven sonata. "You miss it terribly, don't you?" she asked softly. Sister Maria looked up, momentarily startled out of her memories. "The piano? Yes, but it's silly to dwell on it. God has other plans now." "Maybe those plans still include music," Sister Rose said mysteriously, then changed the subject. 2 months into renovations, Sister Agnes called a community meeting. All 23 nuns gathered in the dining hall, curious about the announcement. "Sisters," she began, "I have wonderful news. The Harrington Foundation has offered us a donation for our community center, a concert grand piano." Murmurs of surprise and delight spread through the room. Sister Maria sat very still, afraid to hope. "It's being donated by the music school downtown, which is upgrading their performance hall," Sister Agnes continued. "The piano is only 5 years old and in perfect condition. They'll deliver it next week and place it in the new multipurpose room." Sister Maria felt tears welling in her eyes. A concert grand, something she had played on only a handful of times in her life during her brief career before the convent. The thought of such an instrument in their humble community center seemed almost unbelievable. After the meeting, she approached Sister Agnes. "This is a tremendous blessing," she said. "Will there be lessons offered? The children in the neighborhood would benefit greatly." Sister Agnes looked uncomfortable. "Yes, there will be lessons. The music school is sending instructors twice a week as part of their community outreach program." "I could help," Sister Maria offered immediately. "Perhaps teach some of the beginners or assist the instructors." "Sister Maria." Sister Agnes hesitated. "The foundation has specific requirements. All instructors must be certified with recent training in modern teaching methods. It's not like the informal lessons you used to give." "Oh." Sister Maria tried to hide her disappointment. "Of course. That makes sense. Besides," Sister Agnes added gently, "the doctor was quite clear about limiting strain on your hands. Teaching for hours wouldn't be good for your arthritis." Sister Maria wanted to argue that she knew her limits, that she could teach theory without demonstrating, but she saw the firm set of Sister Agnes's mouth and knew the decision was made. She nodded and walked away, her excitement over the new piano considerably dimmed. The grand piano arrived on a Tuesday morning. Sister Maria watched from a second-floor window as it was carefully maneuvered through the newly widened doors of the east wing. Even from a distance, she could see its gleaming black surface catching the sunlight. It was beautiful, far more elegant than their old upright had ever been, even in its prime. She waited until late afternoon, when the delivery men had gone and the other nuns were busy with evening prayers, to visit it. The multi-purpose room still smelled of fresh paint and new carpeting. And there, in the center, stood the piano, a Steinway Model B, she realized with a catch in her breath. In her youth, she had dreamed of playing such an instrument. Sister Maria approached slowly, almost reverently. She ran her hand along the smooth wood, admiring the craftsmanship. The fallboard was open, revealing pristine white keys that seemed to beckon her fingers. She glanced at the door, confirming she was alone, then carefully seated herself on the bench. It felt different from the old upright's worn seat, firmer, perfectly level, adjusted to just the right height. Her hands hovered above the keys for a moment before she allowed herself to play a simple C major scale. The sound was magnificent, rich and resonant in a way the old piano could never match. The action of the keys was responsive to her lightest touch. She played another scale, then another, marveling at how the notes hung in the air. Sister Maria. She jerked her hands away, feeling like a child caught stealing cookies. Mr. Lee, the contractor overseeing the renovations, stood in the doorway. "I'm sorry," she said, rising quickly from the bench. "I was just—" "No need to apologize," he said with a smile. "It's a beautiful instrument." "Do you play?" "I used to," she admitted. "Many years ago." He nodded, stepping into the room. "My mother played. Not professionally, but she loved it. She said music was food for the soul." He glanced at the piano. "They're finishing up the security system tomorrow. After that, this room will be locked when not in use." Sister Maria understood the unspoken message. This wasn't their private convent anymore. The new community center had rules, procedures, liability concerns. The piano wasn't hers to enjoy in stolen moments. "Of course," she said. "Thank you for letting me know." Over the next few weeks, Sister Maria watched as the community center took shape. Posters went up announcing the grand opening, scheduled for the first weekend in December. The multi-purpose room was furnished with folding chairs and music stands. A printed schedule appeared on the door: choir practice, piano lessons, community sing-alongs. Sister Maria checked the schedule daily, noting the hours when the room was unoccupied. Once she slipped in during such a time, only to find the piano locked, a clear plastic cover secured over the keys with a small padlock. The message couldn't be clearer. This was no longer her domain. When the community center finally opened, Sister Maria attended the ceremony with mixed emotions. She was genuinely happy to see the neighborhood children exploring the new space, to watch elderly residents finding companionship in the reading corner, to observe young parents connecting during playgroups. This had been her vision, after all, a place where the community could gather and grow. But the sound of the piano being played by the professional instructor sent pangs through her heart. The woman was technically proficient but played with a clinical precision that lacked passion. Sister Maria sat in the back of the room during one lesson, watching a young boy struggle with a simple piece while the instructor checked her watch repeatedly. After the third lesson, she observed. Sister Maria gathered her courage and approached Mr. Thomas, the administrator hired to oversee the community center operations. "Excuse me," she said. "I was wondering if there might be times when I could use the piano room. Perhaps early mornings before the center opens?" Mr. Thomas looked at her with surprise. "You play, sister?" "Yes," she said simply, not elaborating on her background. "I miss having access to a piano." He hesitated, his expression shifting to concern. "I'm not sure that would work with our insurance policy. We need staff present whenever the facilities are in use, and the piano itself is quite valuable." "I understand," Sister Maria said, "but perhaps there could be an exception for convent residents? After all, this is still partly our home." "I'd have to check with the board," he said, clearly uncomfortable. "And honestly, sister, please don't take this the wrong way, but we'd also be concerned about your safety. If you were to fall or have a medical issue while alone—" "I'm old, not helpless," Sister Maria said, a rare edge entering her voice. Then, seeing his discomfort increase, she softened. "I apologize. I know you're just doing your job." "I'll ask about the possibility," he promised, though they both knew it was an empty gesture. Word of her request apparently spread. Later that day, Sister Agnes found her in the chapel. "Sister Maria, Mr. Thomas mentioned you asked about using the piano." "Yes," she admitted. But he explained the concerns. Sister Agnes sat beside her. "We're all worried about you. Your arthritis, your age. Several sisters have noticed you've been having more difficulty with buttons and holding your prayer book lately. So I'm to be wrapped in cotton wool?" The words came out more bitterly than intended. "We want you to be safe," Sister Agnes said firmly. "And honestly, Maria, when was the last time you played regularly?" 10 years ago, more. It might not be as easy as you remember." Sister Maria didn't answer. It was true that her playing had become less frequent over the years as her arthritis worsened. But the muscle memory remained, as did the need to express herself through music. That night, unable to sleep, Sister Maria rose from her narrow bed and slipped silently through the darkened hallways. The convent side of the building was separated from the community center by a heavy door, normally locked after hours. But Sister Maria had discovered during her evening explorations that the new electronic lock hadn't been properly programmed yet. It could be opened by simply pressing the bar from the convent side. The multi-purpose room was dark, lit only by the emergency exit signs and the moonlight filtering through the windows. The piano stood like a sleeping giant in the center, its cover still locked over the keys. Sister Maria approached it and laid her hands on the closed cover. She couldn't play, but she could remember. In her mind, she began the slow movement of Beethoven's Pathetique Sonata, her fingers moving silently across the plastic as if it were ivory. In the quiet darkness, with only moonlight as her audience, she played her silent concert, a prayer without words, a performance without sound. And for now, it would have to be enough. The community center flourished throughout winter and into spring. Word spread about the programs offered, and soon the once quiet convent bustled with activity during daylight hours. Sister Maria found herself both pleased by the success and quietly nostalgic for the peaceful days gone by. She had created a new routine for herself. Each morning she would rise before dawn and visit the chapel, then make her way to the multi-purpose room where she would sit at the locked piano for 15 minutes, moving her fingers in silent practice over the plastic cover. It wasn't the same as playing, but it brought her comfort. As Easter approached, the convent began preparing for their annual fundraising gala. This year's event would be special, the first to be held in the new community center space, featuring both the convent's traditional spring concert and an exhibition of local artists' work. The proceeds would help fund summer programs for neighborhood children. Sister Agnes called another community meeting to discuss preparations. "We've been blessed with tremendous interest this year," she announced. "All 100 tickets have been sold already, at double last year's price," the nuns murmured in approval. "The highlight of the evening," Sister Agnes continued, "will be a performance by Dr. Anthony Chen, the renowned pianist who recently joined the faculty at the conservatory downtown. He's agreed to play a 40-minute program as our featured artist." Sister Maria felt a twinge of excitement. She had read about Dr. Chen in the newspaper, a brilliant young pianist who had studied in Shanghai and Vienna before moving to their city to teach. The thought of hearing such talent on their Steinway made her palms tingle with anticipation. "Sister Maria," Sister Agnes said, turning to her, "given your background in music, would you be willing to serve as Dr. Chen's host? You'd greet him when he arrives, show him to the piano, make sure he has everything he needs before and after his performance." The request caught her by surprise. Yes, of course. I'd be honored." For the next 3 weeks, Sister Maria threw herself into preparations. She researched Dr. Chen's background and repertoire, made sure the piano was scheduled for tuning before the event, and even asked Sister Rose to help her practice the proper formal greeting in Mandarin, just in case. 2 days before the gala, Sister Maria was arranging flowers in the entry hall when Sister Agnes hurried toward her, phone in hand and worry creasing her brow. "We have a problem," she said without preamble. "Dr. Chen's mother has been hospitalized in San Francisco. He's flying out tonight to be with her and has canceled all his appearances for the next 2 weeks." Sister Maria's heart sank. How terrible for him. His poor mother. "Yes, it's very unfortunate," Sister Agnes agreed, "but it also leaves us without our main attraction for the gala. I've been calling everyone I know with connections to the music department, but it's such short notice. Everyone is either already booked or unable to prepare a program in time. What about the student pianists who teach here?" Sister Maria suggested. Perhaps one of them could step in? I've asked. They're all performing at the university's spring showcase that same evening. Sister Agnes rubbed her temples. We've promised our donors a special musical performance. The tickets were priced accordingly. I'm afraid we'll have to offer refunds if we can't find a replacement. Sister Maria nodded sympathetically, but her mind was already racing. Refunds would mean significantly less money for the summer programs. Those programs were particularly important for children who might otherwise be left unsupervised while school was out and parents worked. Perhaps we could feature a different type of performance, she suggested. A choir from one of the local schools. On 2 days' notice during spring break? I've tried, Sister Agnes sighed deeply. We'll just have to be honest with our guests, explain the situation, and hope they understand. Throughout the rest of the day, Sister Maria couldn't stop thinking about the problem. She even found herself distracted during evening prayers, her mind wandering to possible solutions instead of focusing on the Psalms. After dinner, she retreated to her small room, pulled out a worn leather folder from beneath her bed, and began leafing through old sheet music she had kept from her days before the convent. Her fingers trembled slightly as she touched the yellowed pages. Some of these pieces she hadn't played in 60 years, yet she could still hear them perfectly in her mind. Her eyes lingered on a Bach prelude, one of the simpler pieces she had once performed. Surely with her arthritis she couldn't manage anything too technically demanding anymore. But perhaps something gentle, something slow. She shook her head, tucking the music away again. The very idea was ridiculous. She hadn't performed publicly since she was 24 years old. Even if her fingers could still find the notes, a big if, her nerves would surely fail her. The next morning, Sister Maria was surprised to find Sister Rose waiting outside her door, practically bouncing with excitement. "What has you so cheerful this early?" Sister Maria asked, unable to help smiling at the younger nun's enthusiasm. "I had the most wonderful idea last night," Sister Rose said, falling into step beside her as they walked toward the chapel. "About the gala." "Oh? You should play," Sister Rose blurted out. "In place of Dr. Chen." Sister Maria stopped walking. "That's absurd, is it? I've heard you playing the old piano before it was sold." "You're very good." "I was very good," Sister Maria corrected her. 60 years ago. Now I'm an old woman with arthritic hands who hasn't performed in decades." "But you still know the music," Sister Rose persisted. "I've seen you in the multi-purpose room, practicing silently on the covered keys. Your fingers remember." Sister Maria felt her cheeks grow warm. She hadn't realized anyone had noticed her morning ritual. "Even if I wanted to, which I don't, Sister Agnes would never allow it. You've heard how she talks about my frailty." She couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. "Actually," Sister Rose said slowly, "I already mentioned it to her." "You did what?" "Last night after you went to bed. We were all talking about the cancellation, and I suggested you might be able to play just 1 or 2 pieces. Not a full program like Dr. Chen, but enough to give our guests some music. And I'm sure she dismissed it immediately." "Not exactly." Sister Rose bit her lip. She seemed considering. "She asked if I thought you were still capable physically. I told her I believed you were, for a short performance." Sister Maria didn't know whether to be angry at this discussion of her abilities behind her back or grateful for Sister Rose's confidence in her. Before she could decide, they reached the chapel where several other nuns were already gathering for morning prayers. The conversation would have to wait. Throughout the morning service, Sister Maria found it impossible to concentrate. The idea Sister Rose had planted kept sprouting new thoughts. What if she did play? Just 1 piece, something simple enough that her stiff fingers could manage. Bach, perhaps, or a slow Mozart sonata movement. No. The very thought made her stomach clench with anxiety. It had been so long. What if she tried and failed? What if her hands cramped or her memory lapsed? The humiliation would be unbearable. After prayers, Sister Maria avoided Sister Rose, not wanting to continue their conversation. Instead, she busied herself with final preparations for the gala, checking the seating arrangements, reviewing the catering order, making sure the display areas for the artwork were properly lit. She was adjusting a spotlight in the multi-purpose room when she heard footsteps behind her. Turning, she found Sister Agnes watching her with an unreadable expression. "Sister Rose spoke to you?" Sister Agnes asked without preamble. Sister Maria nodded. "She did. But please don't worry. I have no intention of embarrassing myself or the convent by attempting to play tomorrow. Sister Agnes stepped closer. Is that what you think would happen? That you would embarrass us? The question caught her off guard. I haven't performed in public since 1962. My hands aren't what they were. It would be a disaster, would it? Sister Agnes's gaze was penetrating. Sister Rose seems quite convinced otherwise. Sister Maria looked away, uncomfortable under the scrutiny. Sister Rose is kind but unrealistic. Maybe. Sister Agnes moved to stand beside the piano, running her hand lightly over its gleaming surface. Do you know what I remember, Maria? I remember arriving here as a novice 40 years ago. You were already established then, teaching music to the children from the parish school, playing for Sunday services. I used to slip into the back of the chapel sometimes when you were practicing alone. The way you played, it was like a direct line to heaven. Sister Maria felt her throat tighten with unexpected emotion. When did you stop believing in your gift? Sister Agnes asked softly. When my hands stopped obeying me. Sister Maria replied, holding up her gnarled fingers. Look at them. How can these play Chopin or Liszt? Perhaps they can't, Sister Agnes acknowledged. But must it be Chopin or Liszt? There's beauty and simplicity too. They stood in silence for a moment before Sister Agnes spoke again. We're not asking for a virtuoso performance, Maria. Just one piece, something to begin the evening before I announce Dr. Chen's cancellation. Think of it as a prelude to an explanation. Sister Maria looked at the piano, feeling both drawn to it and terrified by it. And if I refuse? Then we begin with my announcement and no music at all. Sister Agnes touched her arm gently. Sleep on it. Pray about it. Let me know your decision by this evening. After Sister Agnes left, Sister Maria remained in the multi-purpose room, staring at the piano. She approached it slowly, running her hand along the edge as she had done so many times before. Just one piece, she whispered to herself. With sudden resolution, she pulled the small key from her pocket, the one she had borrowed from the office weeks ago, making a wax impression and asking the groundskeeper's son to cut a copy for her, swearing him to secrecy. She had never used it before, had told herself she was keeping it only for emergencies. Now, her hands trembling slightly, she unlocked the cover protecting the keyboard. The white and black keys gleamed in the spotlight, no longer hidden behind plastic. Sister Maria sat down on the bench, adjusted her posture as she had been taught so many decades ago, and placed her hands on the keys. It was time to find out what was still possible. Sister Maria's fingers trembled as they hovered over the keys. The silence in the room felt heavy with expectation. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and began to play. The first notes of Bach's Prelude in C major filled the space, tentative at first, then growing more confident as her muscle memory awakened. The piece was relatively simple, one she had taught to countless beginners over the years. But its gentle arpeggios held a profound beauty in their mathematical precision. She winced as her left hand fumbled a note, then another. Her fingers weren't as nimble as they once were, struggling to stretch for certain intervals. But she continued, adjusting her technique to accommodate her limitations, slowing the tempo slightly where needed. When she finished the Bach, she paused, flexing her fingers. They ached, but not unbearably so. Emboldened, she began the first movement of Mozart's Sonata in C major K545, another piece often given to advancing students. This one proved more challenging, the quick runs and turns requiring a dexterity her arthritic hand struggled to provide. After a particularly fumbled passage, she stopped, frustration building in her chest. Perhaps Sister Rose had been wrong. Perhaps she was fooling herself, thinking she could play in public after all these years. Sister Maria. She turned to find Sister Rose standing in the doorway, an apologetic expression on her face. I'm sorry to interrupt, Sister Rose said. I heard the music and she hesitated. It's beautiful. Sister Maria shook her head. It's flawed. My hands won't cooperate. Sister Rose entered the room, closing the door behind her. May I? She asked, gesturing to the bench. Sister Maria moved over, making space. Sister Rose sat beside her, studying her hands with the practiced eye of someone who had spent years helping the elderly with physical therapy before joining the convent. Your technique is different from what I remember seeing, she observed. You're trying to play as you did when you were young. That's how I was trained, Sister Maria replied. But your hands have changed. Sister Rose gently took one of Sister Maria's hands in hers, examining the swollen joints. Have you considered adapting? Using different fingerings for some passages? Perhaps choosing pieces that don't require large stretches or rapid repeated notes? Sister Maria hadn't. In her mind, there was a right way to play. The way she had been taught at the conservatory, the way she had practiced for thousands of hours. I could help, Sister Rose offered. My father had severe arthritis, but he played guitar until the day he died. He just kept finding new ways to make the music happen. Sister Maria thought for a moment. There isn't much time before tomorrow evening. Then we'd better get started, Sister Rose said with a smile. What piece were you thinking of playing? I don't know, Sister Maria admitted. Something simple but meaningful. What about Chopin? Sister Rose suggested. His Nocturne in E-flat major? It's lyrical. Doesn't require too many technical gymnastics, and it's beautiful even when played slowly. Sister Maria considered this. The Nocturne had been a favorite of hers decades ago. Let me try. As she began to play, Sister Rose quietly offered suggestions. Use your fourth finger there instead of stretching with your fifth. Roll that chord instead of trying to play it all at once. Let the pedal do some of the work your fingers used to do. They worked together for over an hour, until Sister Maria could play through the piece without major difficulties. It wasn't perfect, her hands still ached, and certain passages remained challenging, but it was musical, expressive. I think that's enough for today, Sister Rose finally said, noticing Sister Maria flexing her stiff fingers. You should rest your hands now and we can practice again in the morning before the gala. Sister Maria nodded, carefully locking the cover back over the keys. Thank you, Sister Rose. Will you tell Sister Agnes you'll play? Sister Maria hesitated, then nodded. One piece. Just the Chopin. That evening after dinner, she sought out Sister Agnes in her office. I'll do it, she said simply. Sister Agnes looked up from her paperwork and smiled. I hoped you might. Just one piece, Sister Maria clarified. The Chopin Nocturne in E-flat. Perfect. We'll introduce you simply as our own Sister Maria Teresa before you play. Then after your piece, I'll explain about Dr. Chen and introduce the art exhibition portion of the evening. Sister Maria nodded, suddenly nervous again now that her decision was official. I haven't performed in public since 1962, she reminded Sister Agnes. I hope you're not expecting too much. I'm expecting exactly what you'll give us. Your best, Sister Agnes replied. That's all anyone can ask. The next day passed in a blur of final preparations. Sister Maria practiced with Sister Rose for an hour in the morning, then rested her hands for the remainder of the day, soaking them in warm water with Epsom salts as Sister Rose recommended. By late afternoon, the community center had been transformed. The multi-purpose room gleamed with soft lighting, the folding chairs replaced with rented ones arranged in neat rows. In the adjoining rooms, local artwork hung on temporary display walls, each piece carefully lit and labeled. Sister Maria retreated to her room to prepare herself. She put on her best habit. Not that it looked much different from her everyday one to outside eyes, but the fabric was newer, the pleats sharper. She said a prayer, asking not for perfect playing, but for the ability to bring some beauty and meaning to those who would listen. At 6:30, guests began to arrive. From her vantage point near the back hallway, Sister Maria watched as well-dressed donors, local officials, and community members filed in, greeting each other with handshakes and embraces. Many stopped to speak with Sister Agnes, who stood near the entrance, elegant in her formal habit, welcoming everyone with genuine warmth. Sister Maria's hands grew cold with nervousness. She flexed them, trying to keep the joints limber, and ran through the piece in her mind one more time. At precisely 7 o'clock, Sister Agnes moved to the small podium at the front of the multi-purpose room. The conversations quieted as she welcomed everyone to St. Catherine's First Community Center Gala. We have a very special evening planned for you, she said, her voice clear and strong despite her age. Before we begin the main program, we have a brief musical offering from one of our own, Sister Maria Teresa. A polite smattering of applause followed as Sister Maria made her way to the piano. She felt stiff, awkward, painfully aware of all the eyes upon her. The distance from the back of the room to the piano seemed to stretch endlessly. Finally, she reached the bench, adjusted it slightly, and sat down. The audience waited in respectful silence. Sister Maria placed her hands on the keys, took a deep breath, and began to play. The first notes of the Chopin Nocturne floated into the room, delicate, questioning. Sister Maria kept her eyes on her hands, focusing on the adaptations she and Sister Rose had worked out. Roll the chord. Use the alternative fingering. Let the pedal help. Gradually, she felt herself relax into the music. Her shoulders lowered, her breathing deepened. The ache in her fingers receded to the background of her awareness as the familiar melody carried her forward. Halfway through the piece, she dared to lift her eyes from the keys. The audience sat utterly still, many with closed eyes or expressions of peaceful concentration. Sister Agnes, standing at the side of the room, had tears streaming silently down her face. The sight gave Sister Maria a sudden surge of confidence. She leaned into the music more deeply, allowing her interpretations to flow more freely. This wasn't the technically perfect performance she might have given 60 years ago, but it held something her younger playing had lacked: decades of lived experience, of joy and sorrow, of faith tested and renewed. As she approached the final section of the nocturne, Sister Maria felt something shift inside her. The barrier she had built between her musical self and her religious self seemed to dissolve. This playing wasn't separate from her devotion. It was another expression of it, another way of speaking to God and about God. The final notes lingered in the air, sustained by the pedal, gradually fading into silence. For a moment, no one moved. Sister Maria remained at the piano, hands still resting lightly on the keys, hardly daring to breathe. Then the applause began, tentative at first, then building, growing into something far beyond the polite acknowledgement she had expected. People were rising to their feet, their faces alight with something that looked like wonder. Sister Agnes approached the piano, her eyes still shining with tears. "Sister Maria," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "would you consider playing another piece?" Sister Maria blinked in surprise. I only prepared the Chopin." "Play anything," Sister Agnes urged. "Whatever comes to heart." Sister Maria looked out at the audience, at the expectant faces, the encouraging smiles. She thought of all the music stored in her memory, pieces she had played or taught or simply loved over the decades. Slowly, she nodded. "Perhaps one more." She turned back to the piano and, after a moment's consideration, began to play Debussy's Clair de Lune. It was more technically demanding than the Nocturne, with its delicate runs and complex harmonies, but somehow her hands seemed to remember the way. When they couldn't quite manage what she intended, she found new paths through the music, simplifying here, reimagining there, but always maintaining the dreamlike essence of the piece. By the time she finished the Debussy, the audience was utterly entranced. The applause was thunderous, far louder than seemed possible from the 100 or so people in the room. Sister Maria rose shakily from the bench, overwhelmed by the response. Sister Agnes embraced her before turning to address the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, then stopped, seeming to reconsider her planned announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen," she tried again, "it seems we have been blessed tonight with an unexpected gift. Our Dr. Chen sends his regrets, but perhaps his absence has allowed us to discover a treasure that was among us all along." In the front row, a man Sister Maria didn't recognize was typing rapidly on his phone. Another was discreetly holding up what appeared to be a recording device. She felt a moment of unease. She hadn't considered that people might record her playing. Before she could process this, Sister Agnes was guiding her back to her seat, and the evening was continuing with the planned art exhibition. But something had changed. People kept glancing her way, whispering to each other. Several approached her during the reception that followed, asking questions about her musical background, expressing astonishment at her performance. "You never mentioned you studied at the Vienna Conservatory," one woman said, clearly impressed. "It was a long time ago," Sister Maria replied, wondering how the woman knew that detail of her past. "Well, you're trending on Twitter now," the woman said with a smile. "My post about you has been shared over 100 times already, and the gala only just ended." Sister Maria had only the vaguest idea what trending on Twitter meant, but from the woman's tone she gathered it was significant. She looked across the room at Sister Agnes, who was deep in conversation with the mayor and several other important-looking individuals. What exactly had she set in motion tonight? Sister Maria woke the morning after the gala to an unusual sound, excited voices echoing through the normally quiet convent hallways. She dressed slowly, her hands stiff and sore from last night's playing, but her heart still light with the memory of the music. When she opened her door, Sister Rose was already waiting outside, practically bouncing with excitement. "Have you seen it?" she asked without preamble. "Seen what?" Sister Maria replied, bemused by the younger nun's enthusiasm. "You're everywhere. Someone posted a video of you playing last night and it's gone, what do they call it? Viral!" Sister Maria blinked in confusion. "I don't understand." "Come with me," Sister Rose said, gently taking her arm. "Sister Agnes has called an emergency meeting." In the convent's common room, most of the community had already gathered. Sister Agnes stood at the front, her expression a mix of concern and amazement. A laptop sat open on the table beside her. "Ah, here she is," Sister Agnes said as Sister Maria entered. "Our celebrity." "I'm no such thing," Sister Maria protested. "Uncomfortable with the attention, I'm afraid you are." "Whether you wish it or not," Sister Agnes replied, turning the laptop screen so Sister Maria could see it. "This video of your performance last night has been viewed over 2 million times since it was posted." Sister Maria stared at the screen in disbelief. There she was, sitting at the piano in her simple habit, playing Debussy. The video had been taken from a phone in the audience, but the sound quality was surprisingly good, capturing both the music and the utter silence of the rapt audience. 2 million? She echoed, unable to comprehend the number. "And climbing by the minute," Sister Agnes confirmed. "News outlets have been calling all morning. The story seems to have captured people's imagination." 87-year-old nun stuns audience with extraordinary piano skills. Sister Maria sank into a chair, overwhelmed. "But why? I'm just an old woman playing the piano. There are thousands of pianists far more skilled than I am." "It's not just about skill," Sister Rose said gently. "It's about your story, your age, the unexpectedness of it. And," she added with a smile, "it's about the obvious joy and devotion in your playing. People are touched by that." Over the next hours, the situation only grew more extraordinary. A reporter from the local newspaper arrived, requesting an interview. Then a crew from a national news network. The convent's phone rang continuously with calls from around the country. Then around the world, journalists, music lovers, elderly people inspired by Sister Maria's example. Sister Agnes did her best to manage the situation, turning away most requests but agreeing to a single interview with a respected cultural program from the public broadcasting network. "They've promised to be respectful and not sensationalize," she explained to Sister Maria. "And this way, we can tell your story properly, rather than having others tell it for you." The interview was conducted in the multi-purpose room, with the Steinway as a backdrop. The interviewer, a thoughtful woman in her 50s, asked Sister Maria about her early training, her decision to enter the convent, and the decades in between. "Did you ever regret giving up a potential concert career?" she asked. Sister Maria considered this carefully. "I didn't see it as giving something up," she finally answered. "I was choosing something else, a different path to express what was in my heart. Music was my first language for speaking with God, but it wasn't my only one." "And now, how do you feel about suddenly becoming famous at 87? Sister Maria smiled. "Puzzled mostly. I'm the same person I was a week ago. I play the same notes Chopin and Debussy wrote long before I was born. If people find something meaningful in that, I'm grateful. But it doesn't belong to me. It belongs to the music itself, and to whatever speaks through the music." The interview aired the following evening, further fueling interest in the elderly nun pianist. More videos of her playing at the gala surfaced online, along with old photographs someone had unearthed from the Vienna Conservatory archives. A serious young woman with the same direct gaze, sitting at a concert grand in a formal recital dress. The convent received dozens of offers, recording contracts, concert invitations, even a book deal for Sister Maria's memoir. Sister Agnes brought each to Sister Maria, who initially refused them all. "I'm a nun, not a performer," she insisted. "My playing was for one evening, for our community center fundraiser. That's all." But as the days passed, something shifted in her thinking. Every morning, she still rose before dawn to practice on the piano. no longer needing to use her copied key since Sister Agnes had officially granted her permission to play whenever she wished. Her fingers, though still arthritic, seemed to grow more cooperative with regular playing, especially using the modified techniques Sister Rose had suggested. One morning, while practicing a simple Schubert impromptu, she was startled by the sound of sniffling behind her. Turning, she discovered 3 of the kitchen staff standing in the doorway listening. One was wiping tears from her eyes. "I'm sorry," the woman said when she saw Sister Maria had noticed them. "We didn't mean to intrude. It's just, your playing reminds me of my grandmother. She loved music too." Similar scenes occurred throughout the week. Convent staff, other nuns, even visitors to the community center finding excuses to linger near the multi-purpose room when Sister Maria was playing. During her evening prayers, she found herself wrestling with unexpected questions. If her music could touch hearts, bring comfort, evoke memories of loved ones, wasn't that also a form of service? Was her reluctance to share her gift more about humility or about fear? A week after the gala, Sister Maria requested a private meeting with Sister Agnes. "I've been thinking about some of those offers," she began. "Not the commercial ones. I have no interest in recordings or concerts that would take me away from the convent. But perhaps there's another way my playing could be useful." Sister Agnes listened intently as Sister Maria outlined her idea. A series of small, intimate recitals held at the community center. No tickets sold, but donations accepted for various causes: the children's summer program, the local food bank, a music scholarship for neighborhood students. "I could play once a month," Sister Maria suggested. "Simple programs, nothing too demanding for my old hands. And perhaps for those who can't attend in person, we could make simple recordings to share online." Sister Agnes smiled. "I think that's a wonderful idea. It honors both your vocation and your gift." "There's one more thing," Sister Maria added hesitantly. "I'd like to start teaching again. Not formally, but maybe once a week I could offer free lessons to children who can't afford regular instruction." "Of course," Sister Agnes agreed immediately. The piano was meant to be shared. The first recital was scheduled for the following Sunday afternoon. With Sister Rose's help, Sister Maria prepared a program of Bach, Mozart, and Chopin. Beautiful but manageable pieces that wouldn't strain her hands too severely. She practiced diligently each day, sometimes laughing at herself when she fumbled a passage. "My fingers aren't what they used to be," she told Sister Rose during one such moment. "No," Sister Rose agreed with a smile. "They're better. They've lived a full life just like the rest of you." On the day of the recital, the community center was filled beyond capacity. People had traveled from neighboring towns, some bringing elderly relatives who had been inspired by Sister Maria's story. A local music school brought their students. The mayor came with his mother. Backstage, or rather in the small office next to the multi-purpose room that was serving as a green room, Sister Maria felt the familiar flutter of nerves. Sister Agnes found her there, sitting quietly with her prayer beads. "Nervous?" Sister Agnes asked. "Terrified," Sister Maria admitted with a small smile. "I was less frightened taking my final vows than I am about walking out there." "And yet you will," Sister Agnes said confidently. Sister Maria nodded. "I will." When the time came, she walked slowly to the piano, the audience falling silent as she took her seat. She looked out at the faces, young and old, familiar and strange, all watching her expectantly. "Thank you for coming," she said simply. "I'm not used to speaking before I play, but I wanted to say this. Music has been God's gift to me throughout my life, even during the many years when I rarely played. If my playing can be a gift to you today, then we're all part of something larger than ourselves. Something beautiful that passes through us but doesn't belong to any of us." With that, she turned to the piano and began to play Bach's Prelude in C major, the same piece she had tested her hands with that night when she first unlocked the piano. This time she played it not as a test or an exercise, but as a prayer of gratitude, her lined face serene, her gnarled hands moving with surprising grace across the keys. In the audience, people leaned forward in their seats, some closing their eyes, others watching intently as this unlikely artist created a moment of transcendent beauty. Phones remained in pockets and purses. This audience had come not to capture a viral moment, but to experience something authentic and rare. As the final notes faded, Sister Maria remained still for a moment, her hands resting lightly on the keys, her head bowed. Then she looked up and smiled, not at the audience, but at something beyond them, a private acknowledgement between herself and the source of both her music and her faith. The applause, when it came, seemed almost an afterthought, not because the audience wasn't moved, but because they sensed they had witnessed something that went beyond ordinary performance into a realm where applause seemed almost inadequate. But they applauded anyway, rising to their feet in waves until the entire room stood in appreciation, not just of Sister Maria's playing, but of her courage, her humility, and her willingness to share her gift, even at the age of 87. And Sister Maria, taking it all in, thought to herself, this is not an ending but a beginning, a new chapter in a life already rich with purpose. Her hands might not last many more years, but for whatever time remained, they would speak their own kind of truth through the language of music. She had been silenced once, but now she would play for as long as she could, for anyone willing to listen.